Hi, Mick McQuaid here to talk about why we design for the web. And I'm going to make reference to this article, or this talk, actually. It's the slides and text from a talk called Web Design, the First 100 Years. And before I start, I'd like to also call attention to this other URL, because the talk that I'm going to reference here makes an analogy between the web and aviation. And you are unquestionably familiar with analogies between software and automobiles, or software and airplanes. And the Snopes page discusses one of the most famous urban legends about such analogies. And if you just Google analogies between software and cars, or analogies between software and aviation, you will find many articles warning you not to do this. But I think that this is a useful talk, and so I'd like to skim it, and then I would like you to read it. So the first part of the talk involves, as I said, an analogy between aviation and in this case the web. Web design, talking about the first 100 years of web design. So what the author does is begins by describing the first 100 years of aviation, and he has a lot of illustrations here. I think he gave this talk, and these were the slides that he showed, and next to it is the text as he spoke it. And some of the slides are worth blowing up. Some of them are interesting, and some of them you can't really read in their native side. This one in particular is quite interesting because it's got a lot of incorrect information in it. And he doesn't mention the fact that it has a lot of incorrect information in it, but that's potentially germane. Anyway, so there are lots and lots of pictures of airplanes over the last 100 years, and the idea is, what would someone at the zenith of aviation — the zenith of aviation was perhaps the development of this aircraft here in the 1960s, or perhaps the first moon landing in 1969. If an engineer at that moment were to be asked where aviation would be after the first 100 years, their picture of aviation would certainly not be what it is in 2014, which is very little change since the 1970s. That's basically his point, is that aviation underwent a great deal of change until the 1970s, and then in his mind, aviation hasn't changed much since the 1970s, and he tries to explain why, and then he tries to apply this analogy to web design. And it's quite an interesting idea. It's actually a very, very interesting idea in my mind, and that's why I want you to think about it. I don't agree with much of what he says here, but some of the things that he says are so compelling that they make for really good points to think about further, and to discuss and think about. At the bottom line, at the end of this, I want you to think about what it is that you want to do for your career. What do you think the web is for? So he speaks of problems in how software hasn't changed as much as we might have imagined it would change. And so he asks this question. This is the most important part of his presentation, I think, in his mind, is this question: what is the web for? If you'll permit the dangling preposition here, up with which I will not put, as some grammarian once said. So in any event, he gives three possible answers to this question: what is the web for? To connect knowledge, people, and of course pictures of cats. And then the second one is to fix the world with software, which he of course ridicules. And the third one is basically kind of quotes and perhaps misquotes from some of Raymond Kurzweil's talks about how the world will change. And of course, he dismisses this one completely and complains that world leaders are forced to listen to nut jobs who are very powerful, like Raymond Kurzweil and Elon Musk. talking about how different the world will be in 100 years. So he advocates the first one. He advocates the somewhere here. He advocates the idea that what if we could only just try to connect everybody and see what happens, then we'll get some nice things. But if we pursue these other things, then many of the awful things that have happened in the world will continue to happen. So I think it's a little silly, but and I don't agree that the job is to connect things. Let's see, where does he say to connect things? So I would like to propose an alternative, and I would like you to think about not only these. So I tried to think about the three choices that he gives us, and now I've completely lost them here. Oh yeah, okay. So connecting knowledge, people, and cats, the one that he advocates for. Fix the world with software, which I would love to do if I could. I of course I know that we can't do it, and it's unfortunate that that people do think that it's possible. And this is very tempting. I mean, I would very much like to become an immortal creature and so on. But I don't think that it's insane at all to think this way. It's probably not going to happen, but so are a lot of things that are fun to think about as thought experiments to think about what it is that you want to do. Because the bottom line, of course, is that you have to think about what it is that you want to do as a designer. What is it that matters to you? And I would like to propose an alternative to this one, which is not my own. It's my advisor's. My advisor always proposed this as his notion of work. Find the pain, comma or semicolon, ease the pain. And so his vision implied that you had a customer in mind, that there was something that you knew about. For example, he knew a lot about the military. So he would search for military customers who were not able to do things that they needed to do or were suffering in some way, and find some way to fix that, to solve their problems, to ease their pain, as he put it. And he launched into several different software adventures on that basis, and in part on the basis that he knew the people. So find the pain, ease the pain implies that you are looking at a group of people and that you know something about this group of people. You know something about what it is, why it is that they're suffering, and you know something about what it is that might ease their suffering. And you use your technical skills. So we're developing technical skills in school that we shall then apply to these things. And those technical skills aren't everything that we can call upon in solving these problems. But this is certainly a viable and perhaps laudable goal. Is that what you would like to do? Connect things? Is that an overarching goal for you, say, for the next 20 years? Is fixing the world with software an overarching goal? Is changing, I can't even quote this one, but doing something unbelievably radical, let's say, being Elon Musk, for example, is being Elon Musk or Raymond Kurzweil your vision of what you'll do in the next 20 years? Or is there some fourth vision, some other vision that you have? So you need to think about this and be prepared to articulate or to write down what it is that you would propose in opposition to these, and perhaps to say what it is that is wrong with these. What it is that you think is wrong with each of these visions if you don't believe them. So I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with this. It's presented in a somewhat blasé, neutral manner. This is certainly presented in a negative manner here, and it's easy to find fault with it. For example, one of the first faults that you can find with it is the one that he gives first, that everything must be instrumented, quantified, and networked. Everything must be net accessible, which requires substantial invasion of privacy. So this one assumes that you do not value privacy, or that you work for people who do not value privacy, you believe in people who do not value privacy. And it further assumes, since it says with software, this also assumes that you don't need domain knowledge You don't need to understand, for instance, what people do in their lives that's not connected to software. You can fix it with software. This is not a very defensible position. We have many examples in history of people trying to use technology, not just software, but throughout history, trying to use technology to solve people's problems that were not based on the problems weren't based on technology, so their solution can't be in technology. In fact, one of the world's great technologists, Archimedes or Archimedes, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, a famous Greek um, thinker, designed a large number of brilliant engines of war to protect his city, but his city was ultimately overrun. So he had this amazing technology that staved off the enemy for a very long time, but the problem that he was facing was not inherently a technological problem. They were vastly outnumbered, and they had no hope of winning. So people celebrate his technology, Archimedes' technology, but they neglect to sometimes think about the fact that the result was that he died along with lots of other people after attempting to use that technology. And then this third one, of course, is exciting, but it's as Yogi Berra allegedly says, it's difficult. Things are difficult to predict, especially the future. So if we look at predictions of the future throughout history, and then we examine the future 10, 20 years after those predictions are made, they're usually completely off. So, for example, Raymond Kurzweil, I like Raymond Kurzweil. I read his stuff. He does believe that he will never die. In fact, one of the books of his that I have includes a lot of prescriptions that I think are silly for different vitamins and minerals that I should take in order to prolong my life until the singularity is reached. Basically, Kurzweil is hoping to live a very long time until technology reaches the point where his consciousness can be downloaded into a computer, and then his consciousness will never have to die. So he's studying all the latest research right now on how to prolong the life of your body, with the idea of giving himself an extra chance to become immortal. And the ideas are fundamentally nice ideas, but when I looked at his book, I could not imagine spending my time. I have other important things to do. I couldn't imagine the remote chance of immortality be worth basically giving up my life as it is to spend all my time working with chemicals and papers in order to try to prolong it. It wouldn't really become a life worth prolonging if I spent all my time doing that. And then, of course, Elon Musk, who is a favorite of many students. Many students believe that Elon Musk is a great genius, and yet most of the students that I have met who would like to be like Elon Musk don't do any of the things that he has done in his life. So Elon Musk is very skillful at doing a lot of really boring things like math. Elon Musk does a lot of math, and I've met a lot of particularly business students who say that they want to be like Elon Musk, and they simply can't. It's just not physically possible to be like an intense mathematician without doing any math. That's just not going to happen. What they would like is to be the subject of news headlines like Elon Musk. And so the things that Elon Musk says that wind up in the press, like this kind of stuff, while appealing, is just not relevant. You just can't live like this unless you want to change your lifestyle a great deal, and even then it's unlikely that you will be like this. So now, some of these examples I'm familiar with. So I actually have worked in AI. So he talks about people who have worked in AI being less people who have worked in AI being less optimistic. Somewhere in here, he talks about people who've worked in AI being less optimistic than people who are not particularly familiar with it. I should point out, by the way, that Raymond Kurzweil is a giant of AI. Raymond Kurzweil is a very, very brilliant scientist who has done a lot of things that are demonstrably amazing. Anyone can see. I can, if I wanted to take a couple of hours to prove to you, as a layperson, that Raymond Kurzweil is a great genius, I'm confident that I could do it. Just for example, by playing one of his keyboards. So he designed keyboards that blew pianists away. They designed electronic keyboards that pianists couldn't distinguish from real traditional keyboards at one time. He designed. He's a fantastic engineer who used artificial intelligence algorithms to do a bunch of things that had a very demonstrable impact in the real world. And I was familiar with him for over a decade from these kinds of achievements prior to this kind of stuff about taking vitamins and living a long time. Elon Musk, of course, is has the potential to help us get off the power grid and to have batteries in our own homes that are not connected to the general power grid, which has been a problematic power grid in many ways. If his battery technology were to succeed, his solar power recharged batteries were to succeed, it would be an immense benefit to humanity. And his work in this is technical work that doesn't get mentioned in any of this kind of stuff. So please do take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. Here's something from like the Matrix, I guess, of people being plugged in and generally saying that things are nuttiness. And of course, the Internet of Things, the Internet of People, and the Internet for people. This sounds really good, but ultimately you have to do things on a day-to-day basis. You have to live your life as a designer on a day-to-day basis. So I want you to read this article carefully and then write down your thoughts about what can be done. So there could be several different alternatives for the future, several different visions that might work. And then what is your place in it? What is it that you, as a designer, want to do? So thanks for listening.